Shalom. I'm going to share with you today the power of biblical Hebrew. The Hebrew language presents the purest, most accurate rendering of the biblical text, unlike translations or paraphrased editions of the scriptures. In Judaism, not only are the words of Scripture regarded as holy, each of the 22 letters of the Hebrew language are also deemed to be sacred. Jewish tradition claims that God spoke the world into existence, so his very first creative act used Hebrew words, making the sacred letters of each word the very building blocks of creation. The Hebrew letters not only have sound, they also have numeric value, and the ancient form of Hebrew, known as Paleo-Hebrew, is comprised of pictographs, a little bit like hieroglyphics, which tell a story when joined together as words. So with Hebrew, we have sound, number, pictures, and stories. Now, what did Yeshua think of the Hebrew scriptures? We have his words in Matthew 5, verse 18. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or stroke shall pass from the law until all is accomplished. The smallest letter is the Hebrew yod, which is like a tiny comma. The stroke is a small dot that is placed above a letter. So Yeshua proclaimed the eternal value of every stroke of the divinely inspired Hebrew Bible. 1 Peter 1 verse 25 says, "But the word of the Lord endures forever." Did you know that Hebrew was not a spoken language for almost 2,000 years? After the destruction of the temple, the Jewish people were dispersed throughout the Roman Empire, and they spoke the language of the country in which they had landed. Hebrew remained the language of the synagogue, but was no longer a spoken language among the people, just like Latin was in the Catholic Church. Elazar ben Yehuda single-handedly revived the Hebrew tongue. Elazar was born in Russia in 1858. He had a fanatical zeal to restore the dead language of Hebrew. After moving his family to Israel, he published a Hebrew newspaper. He worked tirelessly 18 hours a day for 41 years to accomplish his goal. Elazar taught courses in Hebrew and published the first modern Hebrew dictionary that had to create new words for the modern age. He was forced to overcome overwhelming difficulties in his life. He faced serious illness, the death of his first wife, and persecution from Orthodox Jews who deemed the Hebrew tongue too holy to be spoken in everyday life. Ben Yehuda was charged with conspiracy to revolt, and he was imprisoned by the Ottoman Turks for a year. Yet his determined efforts to revive Hebrew as a spoken language was successful, and the Hebrew spoken by Elazar today is the Hebrew that was originally recreated and promoted by Elazar ben Yehuda. Listen now to the words of Martin Luther concerning the Hebrew language. Quote, "Hebrew drinks from the spring, the Greeks from the stream that flows from it, a lesser tributary, and the Latins, who are the Romans, drink from a downstream pool." End quote. Some translations call the pool a mere puddle. It has also been said that studying the Bible in any language other than the original Hebrew of the Old Testament and Greek, which is the language of the New Testament, is akin to communicating with God through a third person. Another scholar compared translated versions of the Bible to a groom kissing his bride through a veil. Now that doesn't sound very romantic, does it? We are told in Scripture that we must study to show ourselves approved. 2 Timothy 2:15 says, "Be diligent to present yourself approved to God as a workman who does not need to be ashamed, accurately handling the word of truth." Word studies on just one Hebrew word can provide linguistic, cultural, and spiritual insight. Let me give you an example. Moed, M-O''E-D, is an appointed feast, a set time, a place, or a meeting. It's an unchangeable time that has been established in the heavens. The feasts of the Lord are Moedim, which is the plural of Moed, and the dates and times of the feast are set according to the first appearance of the new moon. Here's another example you will probably recognize. Genesis 18:14. Is anything too difficult for the Lord? At the appointed time, at the Moed in Hebrew, I will return to you at this time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah's miraculous conception of Isaac occurred at an unalterable time, 25 years after the initial promise by God. Now let me share with you my Hebrew testimony that came to me in a dream. In my dream, I was writing, not copying, writing Hebrew words on a blackboard while teaching a class. I knew how to pronounce the words, and the words were coming from within me. I awoke with an intense desire to study Hebrew. I promised the Lord that I would study Hebrew if He would make it possible. Less than a minute later, I was online hoping to find an email from my traveling son. Instead, I found an email advertising a class, Study Hebrew Online. Having never seen such an ad before, I was amazed. This was in the early days of the internet. I forwarded the email to a woman who later discussed it with me at Bible study. The pastor overheard our conversation and commented, "If you want to study Hebrew, wait a few weeks. We're going to have a class at the church." Needless to say, I enrolled immediately in an introductory course for pilgrims traveling to Israel and in a 2-year seminary course shortly afterwards. Studying Hebrew is fun. Even learning the alphabet is rewarding. My little grandchildren learn the alphabet and the sound of the letters quickly. So take the time to learn a little Hebrew. It will make the Bible become like a pop-up book for you. By the way, Bible Interact offers online courses in learning how to read biblical Hebrew. The information is on their website, BibleInteract.com. Shalom.